Thank you very much for being with us. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Budnam. I am thankful to all international news sources and my team. Following are the news which have been reported by American, European, Asian, African, Australian, Canadian news channels and of course AP, AFP and Reuters news agencies. Now the headlines. Tropical extreme milestone has been achieved in Gaza of death toll more than 50,000. That included the buried one also. Actor Matthew Perry was a payday for 2 doctors and 3 his assistants who made money by giving him Camadine. Peace talk on Gaza ceasefire in Doha going nowhere because Hamas is not in the peace talks. Typhoon Barry hitting Japan. Hurricane Ernesto is going towards Bermuda. Ukraine going deeper in Russian territory, making a command center and a field hospital in Kursk territory, which belong to Russia. Mpox detected in Sweden. A global emergency has been declared by World Health Organization. American president election campaigns are continued by Trump and Kamala Harris. American channel which only talk about their party. Doctor on strike in India due to a rape incident. Israeli bombing continued on Gaza. Now, watch the channel. Before that, on Wall Street, Dow Jones Industrial, Nasdaq, and S&P 500 all increased. Now the channels.
That interview with Elon Musk. Tonight in the Middle East, the tense ceasefire talks now underway amid a deadly raid in the West Bank and a grim new milestone in Gaza. Inside Russia tonight, Ukrainian forces some 21 miles in. Images reportedly of more than 100 Russian soldiers allegedly captured by Ukrainian troops. Tonight, President Zelensky now saying Ukraine is setting up a command center in an occupied Russian town. Back in the U.S., the economy tonight, the stock market bouncing back, making up for all of those dramatic losses last week. Today alone, the Dow soaring more than 550 points. For the first time since a foiled terror plot, Taylor Swift back on stage, but the unprecedented security tonight. The American Airlines flight making an emergency landing. Passengers reported hearing a loud boom and what they noticed in the cabin. And tonight, the tributes for actress Jenna Rollins. So many movies over several decades. The movie with her own son directing, The Notebook. Tonight, Jenna Rollins, in her own words, and what it was like having her son as director.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us here on a Thursday night. We begin tonight with those sweeping arrests in the death of actor Matthew Perry. 5 people, including 2.
We have filed numerous federal charges.
New criminal charges against 5 people in the overdose death of actor Matthew Perry.
They knew what they were doing was risking great danger to Mr. Perry, but they did it anyways.
9 months after the Friends star was found unresponsive at his Los Angeles home, prosecutors accused 2 doctors, a so-called ketamine queen, and 2 others of providing lethal doses of the drug.
The way that his doctors were prescribing him ketamine was completely unconventional.
The CBS Evening News starts now. Good evening, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in for Nora. 2 of those people, a doctor known as Dr. P and an alleged dealer called the Ketamine Queen, appeared in court today in connection to the accidental death of Matthew Perry.
Joining us now, and I'm delighted they're with us, Monica Crowley, former Trump Assistant Secretary of Treasury, and E.J. Antony, public finance economist at the Heritage Foundation. Monica, let's start with you. Does she know, in your mind, what she is advocating? Because even Krugman understands where price controls take us. Or is this just a campaign line to try to, bring in some votes in a very close election?
Well, it's a good question, Laura. I mean, it drives me crazy when I hear people say, well, they just don't understand how the free market works. My view is that you're dealing with absolute ideologues, and Kamala Harris is certainly one, and you laid out the socialist, the Marxist approach that she's embraced throughout her entire political life. You laid that out very well. I think that these people do understand how the free market works. They just reject it. So while she's going to try to cast herself as some sort of fiscal moderate to attract voters, her entire political career and her economic policy positions have belied all of that. You know, she is the most radical vice president. She has embraced massive expansions of government, massive government spending, higher taxes, suffocating regulations, the Green New Deal, socialized medicine, and selling out to China. All of those things are hallmarks of where Kamala Harris has been on the economy and the policy positions that she has embraced. If she changes now, it's simply to get elected. Once she is in that White House, her policies are essentially going to be the coup de grace of the American capitalist system.
All right, well, Trump compared Kamala's plans to that of Venezuela's. Watch.
She's running on the Maduro plan. We call it the Maduro plan, like something straight out of Venezuela or the Soviet Union. This announcement is an admission that her economic policies have totally failed and caused really a catastrophe for our country, and beyond that, a catastrophe in the world.
Well, EJ, they were ridiculing Trump the other day over on MSNBC by saying, oh, he's claiming that she's like a communist. That is just ridiculous, and it shows that the Republicans are out of ideas. But isn't he substantively correct on where this philosophy would logically land us?
Well, Laura, I think one of the interesting criticisms here of President Trump is the fact that these people are simply saying he's wrong without providing any evidence. Please explain to me how Ms. Harris's policies are not, in fact, aligned with the ecology when she's talking about trying to artificially set prices for, I don't care if it's food or rent, you name it. And at the end of the day, President Trump is absolutely correct here. If you employ the same policies as we have had in these other communist countries around the world, you will get the same results here. Just like we had gas shortages in the 1970s, as you already mentioned, you would get food shortages.
Tonight, the criminal charges in connection with the accidental drug overdose death of actor Matthew Perry. More than 9 months after the Friends star was found unresponsive in his pool, 5 people now charged, including Perry's assistant, 2 doctors, and a woman authorities call the ketamine queen. The alleged conspiracy to distribute the drugs that led to his death. Inside the sprawling investigation. Also tonight, Hurricane Ernesto gaining strength and taking aim at Bermuda. In Puerto Rico, hundreds of thousands still without power from the storm. The race for the White House. President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris making their first appearance together since he dropped out of the race. Their major announcement on slashing prescription drug prices. Donald Trump taking questions from reporters, and after the attempt on his life, the new security measures will add to his outdoor rallies. The grim milestone as ceasefire talks resume without Hamas at the table.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
Good evening and welcome. We knew the death of actor Matthew Perry.
Good evening, I'm Amna Nawaz. Jeff Bennett is away. On the NewsHour tonight, mediators work to rekindle ceasefire talks while the death toll in Gaza crosses 40,000.
We are working beyond our capacity. I swear we are destroyed. Life has been ruined. We have dug 50, 60, 70 graves daily.
Fact-checking the Trump and Harris camps' latest claims as the candidates rally voters on the campaign trail. And a new form of the Mpox virus spreads, prompting health officials to declare another global health emergency. We start the day's other headlines in Russia, where Ukrainian forces claim to be pushing deeper into the Kursk region. Today, President Volodymyr Zelensky said his country's troops have seized the town of Sudzha, the administrative center for the Kursk border area. Even though it has just 5,000 residents, it would mark the largest population center to fall under Ukraine's control since last week's incursion. In a video call, the Ukrainian army chief reported that the military now controls more than 80 communities, including Sudzha, which President Zelensky then announced in his nightly address.
The commander-in-chief reported on the operation in the Kursk region. We have a new advance. General Syrsky reported on the completion of the liberation of the town of Suja from the Russian military. A Ukrainian military commandant's office is being established there.
Zelensky's claim could not be independently verified, and Russia has not responded. But defense officials said earlier in the day that Russian forces had blocked Ukraine's attempts to take several other communities. A court in Russia has sentenced Russian-American citizen Ksenia Kavana to 12 years in prison on treason charges. Rights groups say the case stems from a $52 donation Kavana made to a charity that supports Ukraine. She appeared in court in the city of Yekaterinburg today as the judge read her sentence. A U.S. State Department official called it an escalation of the Kremlin's domestic oppression.
Donating to a nonprofit organization, donating to an NGO, supporting the Ukrainian cause and supporting the Ukrainian people as they defend themselves against Russian aggression, especially doing so on American soil, is not a crime.
Kavana, who's also known by the last name Catalina, reportedly became an American citizen after marrying her husband and moving to Los Angeles. She was arrested back in February while visiting family in Russia. Federal law enforcement officials have charged 5 people in connection with the death of actor Matthew Perry. They include 2 doctors and Perry's own assistant. The Friends star suffered an accidental ketamine overdose last year. At a news conference today in Los Angeles, officials said they'd uncovered a, quote, broad underground criminal network that distributed ketamine to Perry and to others. They said the defendants displayed utter disregard for Perry's history of substance abuse.
These defendants took advantage of Mr. Perry's addiction issues to enrich themselves. They knew what they were doing was wrong. They knew what they were doing was risking great danger to Mr. Perry, but they did it anyways.
At least 2 of the defendants, including Perry's assistant, have already pleaded guilty to charges related to his death. Bermuda is bracing for Hurricane Ernesto as it barrels across the Atlantic Ocean. Early today, it had maximum sustained winds of 85 miles an hour as it moves north. Ernesto is expected to become a Category 3 hurricane before passing near or over Bermuda on Saturday with up to 12 inches of rain. Ernesto already battered Puerto Rico as a tropical storm. Today, more than 450,000 people were still without power amid sweltering heat. Former President Donald Trump is asking the judge in his New York hush money case to delay his sentencing until after the November election. In a letter to Justice Juan Merchan, Trump's lawyers argue that the current date of September 18th could improperly influence voters. The judge is also set to rule on September 16th, so 2 days earlier, on a request to overturn the verdict following the Supreme Court's ruling on presidential immunity. In May, Mr. Trump was convicted of 34 counts of falsifying business records related to payments to adult film actress Stormy Daniels. The U.S. economy is showing signs of resilience this summer. The Commerce Department says that retail sales jumped by 1% in July from the month before. That's much more than expected and the biggest increase in consumer spending in a year and a half. A separate report showed that unemployment claims fell by 7,000 last week, and a sign that the national jobs market remains stable. Those reports come a day after a reassuring reading on inflation fueled expectations that the Fed will cut interest rates when it meets next month. Today's economic readings were also welcome news on Wall Street. The Dow Jones Industrial Average jumped more than 550 points, ending well above the 40,000 point level. The Nasdaq added more than 400 points, or about 2.33%, and the S&P ended higher for a 6th straight session. And we have a passing of note. Gena Rowlands, hailed as one of the finest actors of all time, has died. Her career took off in the 1960s and 70s when she starred in a series of films directed by her husband, John Cassavetes. The pair often worked outside the Hollywood studio system and together helped bring independent American cinema to new heights and to new audiences.
Oh, I hope you kids never grow up, never.
Rowlands gave vulnerable portrayals of working-class women, earning Oscar nods for A Woman Under the Influence and the crime thriller Gloria. Decades later, she charmed a new generation of audiences as a woman suffering from dementia in The Notebook.
Do you think our love could take us away together?
I think our love can do anything we want it to.
That blockbuster was directed by Rowland's son, who revealed earlier this year that his mother had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease in real life. Jenna Rowlands was 94 years old. Still to come on the NewsHour, the Biden administration and drug companies make a deal to lower prices for some of Medicare's costliest prescriptions. The backlash against tourists flooding popular European destinations. And 100 years after his birth, James Baldwin's enduring influence on art and activism.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Israel's killed over 40,000 Palestinians in Gaza since October 7th, according to Gaza's health ministry. Over a third of those, more than 16,000 Palestinians, were children. But that grim milestone is still believed to be a vast underestimate, with many buried under rubble and large numbers of Gazans facing life-threatening health emergencies. Among the dead are twin newborns, their mother and their grandmother, who were killed in an Israeli attack this week on Deir al-Balah as their father went to retrieve their birth certificates.
I was going to get the birth certificates for the children. My wife gave birth the day before yesterday. I went to get the birth certificates. I got two babies, twins. I got a call telling me that the house we were staying in got bombed. People from the neighborhood called me. My wife is gone with my two babies and my mother-in-law.
The babies were named Asser and Aysel. Their mother, Dr. Juman Arfa, a pharmacist. This comes as critical ceasefire and hostage release talks are now underway in Doha. More than 100 media workers, news outlets, and press freedom groups are calling on U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken to immediately stop arming Israel. Israel's ongoing assault on Gaza has killed at least 160 journalists since October 7th, the largest death toll of media workers in any conflict, including World War II. Journalists, including Pulitzer Prize winners Laura Poitras and Spencer Ackerman, along with groups including the Courage Foundation, Defending Rights and Dissent, and Roots Action, write in a joint letter, quote, Israel's deliberate targeting of these journalists seems intended to impose a near blackout on coverage of its assault on Gaza by providing the weapons being used to deliberately kill journalists. You're complicit in one of the gravest affronts to press freedom today, they write. The embattled president of Columbia University.
On this Thursday night, drug-dealing doctors arrested in Matthew Perry's death. Damning new details about the actor's fatal overdose, who has been charged, and how they profited.
These defendants took advantage of Mr. Perry's addiction issues to enrich themselves.
Too unsafe to work. Why federal fisheries officers say they've had enough as violence runs rampant in Nova Scotia's fishing industry. Plus, left behind.
There's no hope from Canada, so we have been in a very bad situation.
The Afghans who aided Canada's military still waiting for their help 3 years after the Taliban's takeover. And snapping sunflowers, how capturing that Instagram moment could endanger livelihoods as well as your health.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. There's
more than $66,000 worth of fines have been handed out to illegal ride-hailing operators in Richmond. It's part of a joint 3-month operation with the RCMP and the province to crack down on the unlicensed services. As CTV's Abigail Turner reports, some of the drivers had criminal records.
Ride-hailing apps like Uber and Lyft are common ways to get around here in Metro Vancouver, but there are similar apps that are considered illegal. Richmond RCMP have apprehended 29 drivers who were using unlicensed operators. According to police, the illegal apps bypass the required background checks and safety protocols that are mandated by the province, posing a significant risk to riders. Of the 29 drivers caught, 1/3 of them were repeat offenders. Other users had poor driving records, convictions for impaired driving, and in one case, a driver was even a registered sex offender.
You don't know who that person is, what their criminal record may be, what their driving history is, what type of driver's license they possess. So you are putting yourself at absolute risk by getting into the car with these illegal operators.
$66,000 worth of fines were handed out over the 3-month operation, including operating a vehicle without a license and having the wrong class of driver's license. RCMP were asked if they'd also focus their efforts on targeting the apps as well. The department said their goal was to focus on road enforcement. Abigail Turner, CTV News.
A humpback that was towing floats. The kayakers saw a humpback that was towing floats. The kayakers phoned us immediately. We got out there as quickly as we could. We located the animal, and there were 2 whales traveling together, and they were actually entangled together on the same rope gear, which was just crazy. Never seen anything like that before. They were obviously agitated as well, and traveling quite quickly, 5 to 7 knots. Disentangling one whale is very dangerous. Disentangling 2 whales that are actually connected is even more dangerous. So we really took our time. It was quite complicated because the animals were so close together. We had to get the working line on between them. We had a drone up in the air monitoring the whole time. And we did see that the gear was loosening a little bit with that drag. We decided to use the kegging buoys and add additional drag to those animals. The gear actually popped off both whales. We pulled off almost 400 feet of line and rope from the animals. It's one of the most complicated, difficult rescues I've ever been a part of. The whole operation was about 5 hours, and it was just a great feeling. You know, these 2 whales are going to be hopefully happy whales that live a long time.
Those visuals are just incredible. Now, we're told the whales had been tethered together for at least a day, and they come from 2 different humpback populations, one from Mexico, the other from Hawaii. And the good news is one of them was seen 2 days later up in Alert Bay with free of its swimming gear on its own, probably enjoying some alone time.
If it's Thursday, it must mean there's another weird J.D. Vance statement to unpack. In May of 2021, less than 2 months before announcing his Senate run, Vance gave a speech at a MAGA-affiliated think tank, arguing that companies that support abortion access do so to get cheap labor.
One of the things I've been most frustrated about in American politics is when Stacey Abrams said about a Georgia abortion restriction a couple of years ago that this was a bad bill because it was bad for business. That was the argument of our new corporate neoliberal class. And she was right. When the big corporations come against you for passing abortion restrictions, when corporations are so desperate for cheap labor that they don't want people to parent children, she's right to say that abortion restrictions are bad for business.
You heard Vance name-check former Georgia Democratic House Minority Leader and prominent voting rights activist Stacey Abrams. And Stacey Abrams joins us now. She is also, I should say, the host of the unmissable and very timely podcast, Assembly Required. That podcast launched today. So we are very lucky to have her as in her first interview as a podcast host. Stacey, it's great to see you. Congratulations on the podcast. I'm sorry that you have to respond to J.D. Vance's name check, but I would love to get your thoughts on his allegations here.
J.D. Vance, as is his bent, misrepresents, misunderstands, and misappropriates information to make himself look or feel better and to try to excuse terrible decisions that he makes. What I said and what I mean is that women should have the right to control their bodies because it determines how they secure an education, how they make a living, how they decide to grow families, and that companies are going to make terrible choices if they support restricting those rights. Women make decisions about not only where they work, but what they buy. And if we have companies that do not respect a woman's basic human rights, the right to abortion, the right to health care, then those companies are making poor economic choices. But even more, the notion that women would make these decisions because of some concern about the trade-off between parenting and having a job presumes that you understand the crisis that women are going through when they make these choices. J.D. Vance has shown again and again he has almost no sympathy for how women experience life in America. And he has demonstrated again and again that
Euronews, le journal.
Kiev affirme s'être emparé de la ville russe de Soudja. Les troupes ukrainiennes contrôleraient ainsi près
Euronews, the news.
Russia says it put peace talks on hold as Ukraine further advances in Russia's border regions.
Freed Russian prisoner Ilya Yashin tells Euronews about his time behind bars.
Ukrainian troops advance 1 to 2 kilometers further into the Kursk region. That is according to Ukraine's top commander. They have also taken 100 Russian soldiers prisoner. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says they will eventually be swapped for Ukrainian prisoners of war. The second border region, Belgorod, declared a regional emergency as a result of the further advances.
Обстановка в нашей Белгородской области продолжает оставаться крайне сложной и напряженной. Ежедневные обстрелы стороны вооруженных сил Украины, разрушенные дома, раненые, погибшие мирные жители.
Russian authorities say they evacuated 132,000 people so far from the Kursk and Belgorod regions, and that they plan to evacuate almost 60,000 more. Russia
News. I'm Ruby Cornish. Thanks for your company on the channel this afternoon. Don't go anywhere. More news on our top stories coming right up.
There's a simple way to tune your mood. All you need is one of these and this, the ABC Listen app. Peruse podcasts that amuse you. Choose the news that suits you. Call in if things confuse you. G'day, Carl. What's on your mind?
Well done, Carl. Human consciousness, alien.
Select playlists that soothes you. Anytime, anywhere, every day. Life sounds better with the ABC Listen app. Try it for yourself. Download the free app now. And you don't need to be a scientist to use it.
Critical questions.
Has a cold World War III already begun?
That's a very sharp question. Frank opinions.
I shouldn't have to feel guilty about owning property.
Unfiltered voices.
Trump is a bully. The United States and Australia are not willing to go to war.
On the topics that matter to you.
Are we deploying technologies that we don't fully understand?
We have to talk about this.
Please, get involved.
It can only be Q&A. Monday, 9:30 on ABC TV and ABC iView.
Get out. I can't believe you came back after what you did.
I'm going to get onto HQ, tell them to send down a detective.
Sorry, who are you?
Mackenzie Clark, Detective Inspector, Metropolitan Police. Mackenzie used to have your job.
Why'd you leave? Why?
Hey. How did he do it?
Hands around.
Active. News. Ruby Cornish. Access a criminal deportation policy, which is legalized by. Well,
there's no more important relationship. That's woman.
It says his government doesn't agree with, particularly given some deportees have spent most or all of their lives here in Australia. Mr Albanese says Australia's job is to look after its national interest and the safety of its citizens.
With more.
That the mediators led by the US are so optimistic and happy with the first day of meetings that they decided to extend their meetings into Friday. What we are hearing from the Axios News media outlet, an American news outlet, that the American sources are saying that there is progress being made in these talks. On Thursday, Bill Burns, director of the CIA, as well as Brett McGurk, the Middle East envoy, met with the Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed bin Thani, as well as the Egyptian head of intelligence Abbas Kamel, and the Israeli head of the Mossad. He's the head of the Israeli delegation and the head of the Israeli external intelligence agency. All met together in Doha, Qatar for hours, discussing the potential ceasefire deal and potential release of Israeli captives in the Gaza. Now, those are the what we know have met together. What we don't know is whether Hamas is going to be involved in these talks or not. What we know is that the Americans have said that they have enough confidence that the Qataris and the Egyptians will be relaying information and communicating directly with Hamas, who has been insisting that negotiation must start from where they left off back on July 2nd. That's what they agreed on, the outline set forth by President Joe Biden, and that there has to be, that there cannot be any new negotiation starting at this point. Several issues on the table: the demands of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of keeping an Israeli force on the ground along the Egyptian-Gaza border, the so-called Philadelphia corridor to prevent smuggling of weapons, to creating a mechanism inspecting all those returning to their demolished homes in the north, inspecting Palestinian mail, and preventing also, as Netanyahu says, the return of armed Palestinians. And also, lastly, he demanded a list of the names of those Israeli captives who will be released in the first phase.
The South African National Prosecuting Authority, the NPA, has withdrawn its case against 95 Libyan nationals who were arrested in connection with an illegal military training camp in White River, Mpumalanga. The suspects made their third appearance at the White River Magistrate Court on Thursday, where the Director of Public Prosecutions requested that the court withdraw the matter. In July, a specialized team comprising police and home affairs officials arrested the group on a farm in White River, which was also an illegal military camp. Police discovered drugs, contraband, and military-grade weapons on the site. In a turn of event, all the charges. A total of 40,000 people have so far been killed in Gaza, according to the health officials in the territory. The Israeli-Hamas war has now lasted 11 months and talks are now underway to reach a ceasefire. The offensive has left a swath of destruction across the territory and driven the vast majority of Gaza's 2.3 million people from their homes over multiple times. Diplomats. A cumulative total of 307,000 cholera cases and 2,300 deaths were reported from 26 countries between January this year and July, according to the World Health Organization, the WHO. According to the health agency, the Eastern Mediterranean region recorded the highest numbers, followed by the African region, the Southeast Asian region, the region of the Americas, and the European Union. The cholera response is facing significant challenges due to a severe shortage of oral cholera vaccine, also known as OCV, with the demands far exceeding supply. Threats in a decade.
Inside a health center in Goma, Democratic Republic of Congo, medical teams are working hard to identify monkeypox patients as the number of cases in the city continues to rise by the day. Dr. Maguru noted that the medical staff were worried those with symptoms would refrain from coming to the hospital as the infected are taken into isolation. From Friday to today, we have up to 9 confirmed cases of monkeypox. People who come with suspicious lesions, we isolate them first, then take the sample for testing. Unlike in previous mpox outbreaks, where lesions were mostly seen on the chest, hands and feet, the new form causes milder symptoms and lesions on the genitals. We're worried because we don't feel the government is mobilizing and concerned about the best way to try and control this epidemic, which is threatening the Congolese population. The WHO declared the mpox outbreaks in Congo and elsewhere in Africa a global emergency on Wednesday, with cases confirmed among children and adults in more than a dozen countries and a new virus spreading.
We have a large number of cases. The cases are increasing. The mortality rate is higher than we would tolerate. And then the fourth is that new countries are now starting to report cases. So these are countries that didn't have cases for years and now reporting cases. And several of them are reporting cases of the variant of mpox that is just being spread in the DRC.
Earlier this week, the Africa Centers for Disease Control
count.
From UN peace talks, global health and emergencies, and Swiss politics and finance.
John Zarokostas, one of the 200 France 24 correspondents around the world.
Hello and welcome to Daybreak on France 24. These are this morning's main news headlines. Regional in Doha for a second this Friday. The death toll in the besieged territory surpasses 40,000 after more than 10 months of war. Moscow evacuates more residents from the border region as Ukrainian forces claim fresh advances on Russian territory and say they're now in control of dozens of settlements there. And voting is underway as lawmakers in Thailand nominate to the role of Prime Minister the daughter of billionaire Thaksin Shinawatra. First this hour to Doha, where regional officials say talks aimed at agreeing a ceasefire for Gaza are to resume again this Friday.
Updating this hour, threatened by 24-hour strike tomorrow. A fresh protest calling for speedy justice.
This is news, and these are our top stories. Swedish authorities have reported the first case of Mpox outside Africa, a day after the World Health Organization declared the outbreak a global health emergency. The viral infection has been surging due to a new, more dangerous variant. The virus, formerly known as monkeypox, is transmitted through close contact. The WHO alert can accelerate the distribution of existing vaccines. International mediators in Qatar say talks to reach a Gaza ceasefire and hostage release deal will continue on Friday. The talks are taking place without Hamas, the group that committed the October 7 terror attacks against Israel. Gaza health officials say more than 40,000 people have been killed since Israel's military operation against Hamas began. 5 people have been charged in connection with the death of actor Matthew Perry. The Friends star died from a ketamine overdose last year. Perry's doctor and assistant are among those charged for supplying the actor with the drug. Prosecutors say they took advantage of Perry's addiction issues to enrich themselves. You're watching DW News from Berlin. There's more on our website at dw.com.
Come on the air, multiple suspects. Tonight, breaking news as we come on the air, multiple suspects charged in the death of Friends star Matthew Perry, including 2 doctors. Also, Hurricane Ernesto growing stronger tonight, the danger now to the East Coast. And we remember a Hollywood legend tonight. First this evening, the sweeping arrest in connection with the drug-related death of actor Matthew Perry. Federal prosecutors naming 5 suspects tonight, including 2 doctors. And we remember a Hollywood legend tonight. First this evening, the sweeping arrest in connection with the drug-related death of actor Matthew Perry. Federal prosecutors naming 5 suspects tonight, including 2 doctors. One doctor allegedly texting, quote, "I wonder how much this moron will pay." Prosecutors say they saw the Friends star as a payday. Matt Gupman in Los Angeles. Hurricane Ernesto taking aim at Bermuda now. The hurricane warnings expected to grow stronger. The danger to the East Coast and the other storm system moving into the Northeast, helping to hold the hurricane at bay. Meteorologist Cecily Tynan has the new track tonight. President Biden and Vice President Harris making their first joint appearance since she rose to the top of the ticket. Biden and Harris celebrating what they're calling an historic deal, cutting drug prices for millions of seniors on Medicare. 10 common and expensive drugs, and tonight here, the new prices. Just before we came on the air tonight, Donald Trump saying he is entitled to make those personal attacks on Kamala Harris. And Rachel Scott asking Trump about what he said about American workers in.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Goodman. Have a good life.